Emma and the Eyebrow of Judgment. At Crestwood High, there was a student named Emma who had a special talent, a gift, if you will. Whenever something was happening around her, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, Emma's eyebrow would shoot up as if she were silently questioning the entire universe. The eyebrow raise was her signature move, and it always came with a hefty dose of sarcasm. It wasn't that Emma was mean. She wasn't rude, or intentionally hurtful. But everything, to her, had a way of being disappointing or flawed. No matter what her classmates were doing, Emma had this uncanny ability to spot what was wrong with it, and her eyebrow would let them know. Take, for example, Mr. Carlson's history class. One day, he decided to have a fun group activity where students would act out historical events. He smiled brightly as he explained the task. We're going to reenact the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The students exchanged nervous glances, unsure of their acting abilities. Some of them tried to get excited, but Emma was already shaking her head. Her eyebrow went up, so high it could have touched her hairline. A reenactment? Really? She muttered under her breath. This is going to be a disaster. No one's going to remember their lines. And someone will trip over their feet. I just know it. Sure enough, when the class began, one student forgot to bring their costume, another misquoted history, and someone accidentally knocked over the desk during their dramatic signing scene. Emma watched the whole thing with her eyebrow at its usual altitude. Well, that went exactly as I expected, she said, her voice flat. There's no way anyone's going to pass this off as an Oscar-winning performance. Her classmates, who had tried their best to make the reenactment fun, exchanged looks of frustration. They had worked hard on their presentation, but Emma's judgment had already cast a shadow over it. Later that week, in math class, the students were working on a challenging word problem. Some were discussing solutions, others were frantically scribbling notes, and a few were even starting to get excited about solving the problem. Emma, however, stood back with her arms crossed, watching her classmates struggle. She could almost hear her internal monologue. Here they go again, pretending this problem is going to be easy, she thought. They're going to get the answer wrong, and then they'll spend the rest of the class arguing over it. Great, just great. As one student, Sarah, proudly raised her hand and announced, I got it. The answer is 42. Emma's eyebrow shot up so quickly, it almost looked like it had its own mind. 42? Really? How sure are you? You're probably just guessing, aren't you? Sarah froze, and the entire class turned to look at Emma, wondering if her skepticism had merit. Of course, Sarah was right, the answer was 42. But Emma wasn't one to be easily convinced. Okay, fine. You got the answer, Emma said, shrugging. But I'm sure there's a better, faster way to do it. This is just, well, inefficient. The class groaned quietly, but they'd gotten used to Emma's critical commentary. It wasn't that she wanted to be rude, she just saw flaws in everything. And apparently, those flaws couldn't be ignored. Then came English class. Mrs. Thompson assigned a creative writing project, asking the class to write short stories. Emma's classmates dove in with enthusiasm. Timmy, the class clown, decided to write a funny story about a talking dog. Sarah wrote a heartfelt piece about family, and Max wrote a horror story that gave everyone chills. But not Emma. She wasn't about to let the creative juices flow like everyone else. Instead, she slumped in her seat, staring at her blank paper. Her eyebrow raised slowly as she surveyed her peers. They're all going to write the most cliché stories, she muttered to herself. A talking dog? Really? How original. I bet the dog is going to save the day in the end. And Max? His horror story will probably end with some predictable twist. This whole class is just one big cliché. As she watched her classmates excitedly write their stories, Emma couldn't help but roll her eyes. She could already predict the plots, and they bored her. The entire class seemed like a series of failed attempts at creativity in her eyes. When it came time to share their stories, Emma's classmates stood up and read with passion, getting applause from the rest of the class. Emma, of course, didn't clap. She just watched, her eyebrows still raised, analyzing every story for what it lacked, what could have been better. That wasn't even that impressive, she said to her friend sitting next to her, who was trying to enjoy the moment. It was just so predictable. I've seen this kind of stuff 1,000 times. Her friend sighed, a little exasperated. Emma, can't you just try to enjoy it for once? Maybe not everything has to be perfect in your eyes. Emma didn't respond. Instead, she folded her arms tighter across her chest, looking down at her own blank page. She wasn't going to write a story. Not if it wasn't going to be perfect in her mind. The next day, something strange happened. Her friend Sarah approached her, holding a finished copy of her short story. Hey, Emma, I wanted to share something with you, she said, sitting down next to her. I get it. You think everything is flawed. But what if you stopped looking for the flaws all the time? Maybe you'd see the good things, too. Emma raised her eyebrow. Good things? You mean, like when someone forgets their lines in a reenactment? Or when we get a wrong answer in math class? No, Sarah said gently. I mean, when people try. When they put themselves out there, maybe they don't always get it right, but they're doing their best. You're missing out on seeing what's good because you're only focused on the bad. Emma stared at her for a moment. Was it possible? Could she really see things differently? Her eyebrow twitched, and for a split second, she felt something strange, like maybe, just maybe, Sarah was right. Maybe I'll try to see the good next time, Emma said, her voice softer than usual. I guess I've been kind of hard to please. Sarah smiled. That's all I'm saying. From that day forward, Emma started noticing something she hadn't before, the little successes. The times when her classmates made an effort, when they tried something new, or when they simply enjoyed the moment, despite the flaws. Emma's eyebrow didn't disappear, it didn't even lower completely. But now, when she raised it, it wasn't always because she was criticizing. Sometimes, it was because she was impressed. Or, at the very least, curious. The end, or should I say, the beginning of Emma's shift from skeptical to a little more open-minded.